Hey everybody, this is Coach Steve, and um, we have a guest here. His name is Cody,
Hi.
and and we are going to be talking about something that uh, uh, everybody should talk about: uh, breaking the silence, interest of depression and suicide prevention. According to World World Health Organization, more than 264 million people of all ages suffer from depression globally. Okay, and depression can lead to thoughts of suicide through a combination of psychological and emotional factors like um, experiencing trauma, which can significantly increase the risk of developing depression and can lead to suicidal thoughts. Also, there's hopelessness when someone feels overwhelmed by negative thoughts and emotions. They may begin to believe that things will never get better or improve, leading to alarms of hope from the future. And I'm doing this video for everybody. Now I normally do it for stroke survivors, okay, caregivers, and I believe that's a very high percentage of us have uh, been depressed and thoughts of suicide. And I'm a small number. After I woke up from the coma and saw what I did to myself, it was really tough. If it wasn't for my faith in God, I wouldn't have made it. So, Courtney,
Hello.
um, what's up, man?
What's up?
Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So, my name's Cody, and I'm a software developer for a bank. I guess for hobbies is I like to study psychology, obviously programming for my career. I like to study philosophy, um, but first and foremost, the Bible and theology. I'm a very disciplined person. I go to the gym probably like 6 days a week. I'm very mindful of my health. There was a time in my life when I kind of went off the rails, and akin to Steve here, if I wouldn't have had God in my life, I wouldn't be here. I don't think I would anyway. And so, yeah, where would you like to start today, Steve? On the topic of
Well,
depression.
yeah, it is a pretty deep subject. I have three questions, and here's number one. Okay, what role does hopelessness play on the progression from depression to suicidal ideation? Ooh, that's that's a tough combination of words. But suicidal ideation and how it can be addressed in the beginning stages of depression or suicide prevention efforts.
So, what role does hopelessness play in the progression from depression to suicidal ideation, and how can it be addressed in suicide prevention efforts?
Yeah,
Um, so this kind of goes into. I actually have my own YouTube channel. It's a Frequency and Faith, and
yeah,
I'll have Steve drop the link in here. But every day, well, not every day, but like Mondays and Fridays, I go and read the Bible. And this is something I think that really links into theology. in the Bible and religion a lot. So when it comes to hopelessness, there's like different stages of depression.
Yeah.
And I guess you could probably look at the base layer of it as being sadness. Everyone gets sad. That's
Yeah.
normal. Everyone has times in their life or moments and events in their timeline of existence on this earth where, you know, you're sad, but then it bounces back to happy. And, that's the normal lever, I guess, between happy and sad.
Yeah.
That happens. And when you become depressed, I believe that it originates from exactly that word, hopelessness. It's when you don't know if things are ever going to get better, and your time that you're expending here on earth is void of meaning,
Ooh,
and you
that's
can't
a good.
really attach meaning to the breaths that you take, the steps that you take.
Yeah.
And sometimes there are some people wherein the circumstances that they have to live in, I believe there's a good argument for if they were to end their life, it would be less painful. Like there's some circumstances where people live in that are
Yeah.
absolutely brutal and atrocious.
Yeah.
And it's a hard argument to tell them that it would be worth living. Now,
Yeah.
hopelessness can also transform, and it goes through stages of you can start to be you can start to be resenting. It's resentment, and then you can turn that to vengeance, and that's when you'll have like bullies that come up and shoot up a school or whatnot.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
because the hopelessness, it gets contorted and kind of twisted and put on its head,
Yeah.
and then you can want to take out all of the pain that you have experienced in life out on others because it's all meaningless anyway.
Yeah.
And so I would ask you, Steve, you've had something happen in your life where
Yeah.
obviously you used to live your life with a completely different set of parameters than you do now. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And
Totally
so,
different.
right. And then one day you had an event happen that was unforeseen. And then you had to change everything at the drop of a dime. And
Yeah.
you had to attach the framing that you had on the world to a different picture, right?
A horrible picture.
A horrible picture,
Yeah.
supposedly. Now, why I think this all ties into theology is why why the existence of God in the Bible and the lessons in there, why they're so powerful, is it gives you meaning, and it gives meaning to suffering, and it gives meaning to your life,
Yeah.
and it gives you an entity and a purpose to attach to that is outside of yourself, and
Yeah.
not only outside of yourself, but is outside of every single variable that we interface with here on this plane of existence.
Yeah.
And the common theme over and over in the Bible, it's not pretty. Um, Probably my favorite Bible verse right now, and maybe my favorite Bible verse of all time, is Hebrews chapter 5, verse 8, which states, "Son though he was, he learned obedience from what he suffered."
Yes.
And so, what that means is that verse is speaking about Jesus, and Jesus was 100% man and 100% God.
Yeah.
And a rabbit hole you can dive into is how can a God, or 100% God, how can a God, or the God, since he is a portion of God himself, put in a human vessel, how can he learn anything, for one? And I don't want to take time speaking about that because that's a whole
Yeah.
nother rabbit
Yeah.
hole. But
Yeah.
it says he suffered, and he did. And the whole language of the Bible, like the whole theme of it, is everyone's heard and it's a Bible verse where you take up your cross and follow me.
Yeah.
And that's what the Bible is about, is enduring the suffering here on this world for a greater meaning. And
Yeah.
without that narrative playing out in my life, I don't think I could have made it through many things that I've been through. Like in my past, there was a time where I got jumped and I had like, I don't know, 7% chance of living or something like that. I got stomped on by a bunch of dudes and victim of attempted murder. And I lived through that. And then there was things that followed that event. Because a lot of times, I'm sure you can attest to this too, Steve. When your event happened and you had a stroke, you probably had events happen in your life that were a causality of that event, right? It was a chain
Yeah.
reaction. And
Yeah.
now, since you had to frame your new life
Yeah.
to a new picture, you don't even know how to interact with the events that follow the first event that was the onset of this tidal wave of catastrophe that it
Yeah.
waded into your life.
Yeah.
And without the narrative of God being able to fix everything, and that
Yeah.
suffering has purpose, and that there's something greater beyond all of this,
Yeah.
and of course the underlying language of love being the tether that connects everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I had the stroke, I knew what I did to myself. I was laying there in the bed almost every night crying, and I had those of it ended it all because I felt that I was a bad husband to my wife Danisha. I wasn't a good father to my sons. Um, um, I couldn't um, have my career as a man of God. It was a long man, and if it wasn't for God, I never made it out of there. So that man, I told you, no perspective is needed um, because I'm a people to really hear the reality of um, a suicidal thought on depression. And man, you are so good and finding that inter, intricate things. So thank you for that. Now, number two, how can
Well,
it?
actually, hang on, Steve. I think I want to say something about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
So, you spoke on, you're absolutely right. And that's such a good point that you need a new perspective after the events that take place.
yeah,
And I think you spoke on something that we should touch on is you said that when you woke up and you started living out this new life that you now have to live because the events of life, or maybe it was God, and
yeah.
we can talk about that in a second. When you told me that you had three questions, I was like, no, we got a lot more than that.
Oh,
Because I was like, he ain't never done nothing with me before. It's gonna be going down a big
yeah.
rabbit hole,
Oh my
especially
God.
with depression. So I'm okay.
I
You
was
said,
gonna have a half an hour party.
yeah, you can edit. And
Oh my God.
so you said that you felt like you were a bad husband, and that was because the
um,
only way that you knew how to be a husband was through the experiences that you lived out up until that point, which you were the same person, but you had to live through different parameters, right? You
I,
couldn't do things the same afterwards because it was
yes,
different, right? And you
yes.
didn't know how to really frame that in your mind and how to like make that
No.
synchronize, right? Yes, and it causes misalignment with your perception of the world. And that's
Yeah.
that's where anxiety comes from, is when your mind is when you're looking at something and you don't understand the placing of it in the world, and you don't understand what you thought was going to happen when you see something doesn't happen, that causes anxiousness and anxiety because
Yeah,
it's like wading off into the unknown, you know?
yeah,
I was just listening to a lecture the other day, and they're talking about this woman that was doing studies on livestock, and she was talking about the animal mind and whatnot. And they had examples of like cows looking at this briefcase that was in this field, and they were really stumped by it. They didn't like it because it wasn't supposed to be there, because they
yeah,
would stop before going into the slaughterhouse. And that's so true when it comes to humans as well. We get so used to it, things every single day. And when it comes to being sunk down into the whirlpool of suicide, I would say, is things that we're used to every day, they're not the same anymore. And everything kind of gets swallowed up by this black abyss. And it's hard to just justify doing it anymore because it's like this cloud is over you all the time. And it's justifiable for someone to feel like this isn't worth it. It, there's, if you didn't believe in something outside of yourself, this world, if you're looking for a reason not to do something or not to wade off into the unknown, you'll find a reason because this world is very cruel, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
unforgiving.
yeah. And that means a part to what I'm trying to encourage every stroke survivor and take caretakers. Without faith in God, I mean, this, like you said, this world is cruel, and we need that outside entity to help us do it. He helped us by sending his son to die for us. I think that says something about his character. Um, he died so we can have life and have it more abundantly. Um, but
Think about what Jesus did. He was the perfect example of living through this world,
yeah,
right? He
yeah,
came here, he was sent here and sacrificed, spit on, killed by his own chosen people,
yeah,
the people that he loved. People hear that saying, take up your cross and follow me, but I don't think people really think about what happens at the climax of your adventure when you're carrying a cross.
yeah,
Think about what happened to Jesus. He got nailed to that cross.
yeah, yeah. He
It's
did.
like he did, right?
Yeah,
Out of love,
for us.
sacrifice. Yeah, for us, sacrificing everything for us.
Yeah, and now I know when they made this an theological discussion, you kind of pulling down that rabbit hole, but we were gonna try to stay focused. And I'm gonna ask this second question, okay?
Yeah.
How can individuals recognize and address psychological pain as a significant factor in depression and suicide risks, both in themselves and in others? Oh Lord, come
So I
on.
think if I've always heard that if you have a memory of something that's over around 18 months old
Yeah,
and it still causes an emotional reaction out of you, there
yeah,
is something still there and something that you need to address. There's something still there and something you need to address.
yeah,
And I think that timeline's pretty true. And I think people generally know when they're depressed. Like there are some people that are hypochondriacs or whatnot, and they'll just
yeah,
think everything's wrong with them. Or maybe they have neuroticism. Like I would say I even delve on that in that spectrum a little bit sometimes just because God just wired me to think deeply. And I think when you're depressed, when things aren't right.
Yeah.
Everyone has seasons of it, but
Yep.
when it's like persistent and it's
Yes.
like this stable underlying frequency that's
Yeah.
like constantly trying to pull you underwater, that's what I always think about with it. It's like there's this like cloud over you, or something's like kind of underneath you trying to pull you under. And if you're constantly having to deal with this friction
Yeah.
of not being pulled under and drowning in your own sadness, then that's
Yeah.
probably a problem. I
Yeah.
would say that is a problem.
Yeah. Wow.
Does that answer the question, Steve?
Yeah. I was waiting for you to come up with something. Um, um, because the thinking is so unique. So I want
I
people.
mean, I'll be honest, I'm going through something. I have been for a little while now. I used to be on antidepressants back when I was younger. And I guess a little story about my past is I had a grandfather who shot himself, and he was the guy that was a self-made farmer, and he did everything by his hands since he was 16 years old and built up
Yeah.
an acreage to like 2,000 acres, and he did everything in his hands, and his body started failing him. And then
Yeah.
his faith in God was stronger than anyone I had ever known personally ever. He read the Bible every day, and I was with him when I was a kid, and he would go visit his farms and whatnot. And his
Yeah.
body started failing him, and so one day it was his dad's birthday, and he couldn't really walk at that point in his life. He had to crawl, and he crawled for the gun, and he shot himself. And that blew apart the entire family. And
Yeah.
that actually, so when you told me before we started recording, Steve was like, I'm going to ask you if you had any suicidal thoughts. And I was like, well, it's more complicated than that, because seeing what my grandfather's suicidal act, the effect that that had on the family, after I seen that, the aftershock of that, it wasn't an option for me anymore. I didn't want to do it anymore. I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't
Yeah.
do it for the
Yeah.
sake of others. I wouldn't do it. I just
Yeah.
it like I don't want to say it took that option from me, but from then on, after experiencing it, I just would never do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's that.
Now that leads us to the third question I have. Um, in what ways can discussions like we are having about depression and suicide prevention help to reduce stigma and promote mental health awareness in communities worldwide?
So, in what ways can discussions about depression and suicide prevention help to reduce stigma and promote mental health awareness in
Yeah.
communities worldwide?
Yeah.
So, of course, discussing it is key, obviously. I think
Yeah.
I think we're in a good place in society where people want to hear people talk about depression. People want to hear that. People are generally supportive of it. I mean, look,
Yeah.
you got people like Robin Williams, for instance. He was a comedian. He loved making other people laugh, and he died, suicide, right? If my
Yeah.
memory isn't
Yeah.
incorrect. And I think that goes into the thing where people that are depressed, they want to see other people happy because they want other people to feel that feeling that they're trying to chase all the time, because they
Yeah.
can't attain it. It slips through your fingers. And so obviously discussing it is a big deal. You shouldn't hold it in.
Yeah.
I would I would just tell you to go to God about it. And if you don't have faith, I would tell you to really consider that.
Yeah.
And I would I would I really would. And if you don't believe in it, I would ask that you just pray to God to do something to show himself to you.
Yeah.
And also, in regards to just generally trying to defeat depression, The biggest thing is you need to have meaning in your life. You
Yeah.
need to attach meaning to your life. Meaning is what purpose and meaning. That is what makes enduring all this pain and atrocities and cruelness that we encounter every day and the unforeseen, unforgiving events that happens in our lives. That is what makes it, and that's what enables us to endure it,
Yeah.
is having purpose, knowing that there is a point to all this. And you can find great purpose in helping others,
Yeah.
right? You can find great purpose in loving others. And I would caveat that by saying, in order to love another person correctly, you first have to learn how to love yourself,
Yes.
which is a testament in the Bible. And once you start loving yourself, and I would even say you could practice loving others before you really love yourself. Like if you're trying to learn, there's some people that are in some families that don't know how to love, right? And they've never been loved before. So they don't even know what the hell it is. So you can at least practice, right, on other people if you don't
Yeah.
love yourself. And
Yeah.
you'll start feeling the reaction from them as you do that. And you can practice loving yourself too. Like, what would I do today if I loved myself? Right? What
Yeah.
would I do today if I believed that tomorrow was worth it? What would I do today if I believed today was worth it? Maybe I can make it through the next 10 minutes. Maybe I can make it through the next hour. There's been
Yeah.
times in my life when I didn't even think, I was just existing and just waiting for it to be over. And that's a hard place to be. It's not,
Yeah.
it's really dark. What do you think, Steve, from your experience?
I know whenever experience those feelings ever again. If it's like you said, a very dark place, and in order to talk about this, man, I saw the light at the end of the tunnel though, because
Yeah.
uh, my personal and intimate relationship with God, um, He pulled me. It's like um, He grabbed my hand and said, "Come on," and I've been with Him. I didn't know what I was going to do. I could look. I was in the bed. I couldn't move. The only things that I could move was my head and my arm. That's it. Everything else was. I had been in a coma for 3 months. So, but too long. And I'm about to say this to my audience. Through it all, you can still make it. And there is a process that you can go through. Um, I'm mad at myself because I meant to get the number from the hotline, suicidal hotline, but I didn't get it. But I'm gonna get it before this video is actually posted. The stroke was a lesson for me, and now I can accept that being in this position because it made me focus on him on the spiritual side more and balance the human side with it. So
That brings up such a good point. I
yeah,
got to real quick. I think we're raised from when we were born, we're raised to depend on our five senses, right? So that's
mm,
what we learn from. That's what we experience, right? So when all of that falls apart, like in a scenario where you had a stroke and your whole world, it didn't necessarily fall apart, but it completely changed to what it was. And when
yeah,
we're raised to interface with the world based on our five senses, when those senses get contorted or twisted compared to what we're normally used to, everything falls apart. My whole world falls out from under itself. And that
Yeah,
causes the anxiety and that causes the onset of the depression I feel.
yeah,
And that's why I think having God in your life, having that sixth sense, they say, the
yeah,
spiritual aspect of it is so important because it doesn't rely on the fulcrum of the five senses, right? That's
yes,
all I wanted to say.
yes. And you have to have the balance because we know sexual perception is off. You need his voice to tell you where it is off.
Exactly. That's such a good point, Steve.
Yeah,
Such a good point.
you know. Okay, uh, Cody, shoot boy.
Yeah, that's a good place to end.
I knew it. I knew it was going to happen. I knew it. Um, um, and I hope everyone who's watching and can take something from this. And Cody, why don't you give them your information?
I will. I'll forward it to you, Steve. You can put it in the description. But yeah, again, I have a YouTube channel called Frequency and Faith where I go through the Bible and I just read a chapter of the Bible and then I give my takeaway and I kind of tether psychology and philosophy to the Bible and just give my unique takeaway with it and
Yeah,
kind of all the lessons that God has taught me up to this point, whether through myself or by proxy, but learning from others and other mentors. And
yeah.
yeah, I'd love to see you there. And thank you so much, Steve, for having me on. I love
Um,
you, man. And you are a true testament to walking out the word of God and being strong for others when they need it. And our society needs more people like you. And I mean that.
my
I
man,
mean that.
thank you, man. Thank you for saying that. And I want you to know that, man, the way that you think is first unique, and then it is phenomenal how you
I
see
appreciate it.
things. So God has something for you, and He's going to bless your ministry. Yeah.
I believe it.
So I love you guys. God bless you, and I hope to see y'all the next time. Peace.
Thanks, Steve.